My question to you, Karin, is what are you seeing in 2025 and beyond as top challenges and opportunities for HR professionals and people-centered companies?
You got to be flexible. And I think that's the part that's hard. It's hard sometimes to be focused on all of the individual aspects. Everyone's tired right now. The pace of business is intense. Expectation that we're changing and we're adapting and we're optimizing everything. People are really tired. And so I think people are human. They've got other stuff going on. Work is one aspect of their life.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Direct Application, where leadership theory meets the Monday morning meeting. I'm your host, Matt Harrington. And this show is geared towards getting you out of the clouds, a little bit of leadership development and theory, and getting much more to the workplace. How do we take good philosophy, good teaching, good thought leadership, and directly apply it to you for this week in the next 20 to 30 minutes? Some episodes, if you've been watching, have focused really around the 3 to 5 minute solo blogcast. I usually reflect on what I've written in the past couple of weeks. However, today is a special one, and we're going to do these throughout the months ahead. Once a month, we want to roll out a longer cast, which is an interview with somebody, an HR specialist, plant managers, young supervisors, authors, thought leaders, even consultants. So we want to bring some of those big theories, those big leadership concepts, and bring them right down into your inbox or feed. Today, I am joined by a longtime colleague and friend and someone I deeply admire, Karin Tierney. Karin is an HR consultant with 25 years of experience helping organizations navigate everything from benefit strategy to leadership development. She currently spends her time coaching leaders, running fractional HR teams, which I think is pretty cool, and building people-first cultures that actually work. And that's something we're going to talk about in the interview that we're about to have with her. But before all that, even, Karin's been in the game for quite a while. We go back to a certain national coffee company based here in Vermont and share a mentor and coach in my late mother, Deb Mackin, where we both, I think, cut our teeth on the hard human relational work of building teams and people. So I'm so excited, so thrilled for the interview that you're about to watch with Karin. We can't wait to do it. So let's roll that interview.
Thanks so much, Matt. I'm really excited to be here today. I appreciate you asking me to join.
Absolutely. Well, you and I go back a ways. And so it was great. I reached out to you, and it's been a minute since you and I have connected. So I was really happy that we could come together and do this thing. So let's dive right into it, Karin. You've been consulting now almost over a decade, and you recently said to me that you love it. And so I would just love to start the interview with, why do you love it? And what exactly do you love so much about HR and consulting and helping organizations?
Yeah, I mean, it's really the most fun part of it. I think when you're doing HR for an organization, it can feel really overwhelming. And so as a consultant, I get to go in and I get to work with great teams on specific topics. And I get to work with my team, which is a group of talented folks. And we can try to help organizations, leaders figure out their work and people issues. And my clients value our expertise. They value our confidence. And a lot of times it's just working with organizations and leaders who don't have that confidence. This is a complicated area of knowledge and rules. And so if we can help them feel a little more confident in their decision making, then that's a win. And it's fun.
Good. Well, you and I have at least been in the same circles. And so oftentimes I think one of those circles is really around this love for adaptive leadership. And what we mean by adaptive, and it may go by many different names, but I think what we're talking about is an understanding around the leadership role. And even, if you're a leader, the idea that you need to flex to other people's style before they flex to yours. So it's not the my way or the highway style. It's more of the, hey, I want to learn so much about my people, through the various tools that we can to understand how I might be able to flex to them. And right now, I think we're seeing such a need for flexible, adaptable leadership. And I'm sure you and I have been looking at this for 20 years plus years. Like, we've always said that we needed more adaptive leadership. But really, when we start to look at burnout, we start to look at return to office battles, office politics, national politics, shifting talent pools, to me, it's always amazing to think about how much people aren't talking about adaptive, flexible leadership. My question to you, Karin, is what are you seeing in 2025 and beyond as top challenges and opportunities for HR professionals and people-centered companies? And does that kind of fit all around that adaptive, flexible leadership model?
Yeah, I mean, it's spot on, Matt. You got to be flexible. And I think that's the part that's hard. Some of us that either are not just focused on being people leaders, but we've got other work to do to keep the organization running. It's hard sometimes to be focused on all of the individual aspects of connecting and building those relationships and motivating and engaging folks. And, everyone's tired right now. The pace of business is intense. The expectation that we're changing and we're adapting and we're optimizing everything. People are really tired. And so I think as leaders in organizations, it's how do you get as much done as you can through your people, recognizing that people are humans and they've got other stuff going on. Work is one aspect of their life. And so how do you figure out what that right balance is? When to push, when to pull, when to back off, when to be supportive, and when to recognize that it's okay if you have to step back and be supportive and let your team member have a little breathing space because they've got stuff going on outside of work or whatever, and that they're likely to be more committed and motivated to help the business if you give them that space. And so it's a really hard dynamic for organizations and for leaders to navigate that balance, to not get frustrated about, providing too much flexibility, not being taken advantage of, and then also, trying to meet the expectations and needs of clients, which is really demanding right now.
Sure. Well, and I know we're going to get to that concept around the business as family. And so I want to hold off on that one. One of the things that you and I were talking about, Karin, when we did kind of our prep call, was all around this idea of, and I think you said it, and so it was kind of an aha. And I see it now with just even the people that I know in the workplace, which is during COVID, people had more leverage. Employees maybe potentially had more leverage. And we look at that. We look at remote work, flexibility. Rising wages were happening between the 20s and beyond. But recently, I think the pendulum has been swinging back towards perhaps employers, right? So we're seeing more of a push to return to work policies or tighter compensation controls, right? So it's an interesting battle, and I think you reflected on that. Look, the unemployment rate is still pretty low, right? 4.1, I think, is where we're at. But, when we look at, there's fewer job openings, right? It's a tighter market. It's tougher competition. We've got automation and AI coming in. We've got the rise of even unemployment for employees that are disadvantaged, which I think is relatively new in a vulnerable group. How are you seeing this shift play out on the ground? And what does it mean for leaders when they're actually trying to build trust? And when you and I talk about workplace and culture, we're talking about that cornerstone is the employee's trust, employer, and vice versa, the employer trust employees. But it seems like we're in a time right now that trust is limited. So what are you seeing on the ground, and how does that reflect?
Yeah, I mean, I think since the pandemic, there's definitely an expectation where folks want more flexibility, and whatever that flexibility looks like. I need to drop off my kids. I need to pick up my kids. I need to come in late. I need to, leave early. I want to work remotely a little bit. I want whatever those flexible needs are. Employees have them. They recognize that, that it's important to have that ability to take care of the other aspects of your life. And so I think you see employers still needing to meet employees where they're at. And the more willing you are to have the conversation. And again, I'm not saying that means that employers have to just give everything and do whatever employees want, but the ability to sort of figure out how to have the conversation, to dialogue around what both sides need, what both sides want, and try to find some sort of compromise or work within. I think that's what's needed. I think that employees will value and trust their leaders if there is that willingness to listen first, foremost, and then to care about what's going on with them as humans and to help them. And that help may be providing, the ability to leave a little early a couple days a week or whatever it is, and hoping that somehow there's that balance. And again, somebody will say, well, you can't just hope, you need to be able to run a business. And I think it's really hard for organizations that are driven by hard numbers. They can still find employees out there, but I just think that the burnout rate is higher. You have to pay a little bit more if you're expecting that much more from employees. I think that the organizations, maybe the smaller, the medium-sized groups that do a little bit of a better job in being a little more flexible, it really helps in terms of building the culture and the trust and the willingness to give and take.
Yeah. I could take that in a couple different directions. One of the directions I do want to take it, Karin, and getting back to like the workplace as your family thing, I was commenting to you recently just that I was seeing these, I don't know if they're contrarian memes anymore. What is a contrarian meme? Because it seems like it changes so often that nothing can be contrarian anymore. But they were saying like the workplace isn't your family, right? Go home, or you shouldn't have the passion for the job to work around the clock, right? Like own yourself. And yet you're also talking about that HR and really people-centered organizations can care for one another. And so, I love to hear your spin or your thoughts on what are you seeing right now in the workplace culture? Like, and be honest, is it much more, as we've just alluded to, like, hey, stricter policies, hey, like we're capital first, we're money first, or we're still trying to be human first? And potentially, where do you think it's heading, or where do you want it to head? I mean, again, thinking about companies not being perhaps your blood family, but I know a lot of companies, and I think I try and run some of my organizations with very deep ties to people that I would probably call up, top 5 people on my speed dial to help me out in a situation. And that's not family, I don't know what is. So what's your take on the culture, the ground, people-centered? Where do you think it's heading? Where do you want it to head?
Yeah, I mean, I think the challenge with families and that analogy is that, families are dysfunctional, and so is the workplace a lot of times. I mean, I think there's a good amount of diversity in terms of different approaches, being profit-centered, being people-centered, and a mix of both. I think, you see younger generations that are really, I think, more in tune with themselves, maybe more self-aware about what they're looking for. They're at least they know that that's a factor that they want to take into consideration when they're looking for a job. It's like, hey, does this meet my values? Do my values align with this organization? That thought process, I think, is happening a lot more frequently than perhaps my grandfather's generation, where he was just like, yep, I'm coming in, tell me what you want me to do. And that was it, right? He never questioned anything, and he just did what he was supposed to do. I think, if you're looking for specific things, you need to, again, it's self-awareness on both sides. It's self-awareness for the employee. What do I need? Well, I need flexibility. I've got kids. I need to be able to drop people off, pick people up. I've got sick kids occasionally. I need some rope in that regard. Or if as an employer, like, I need people who are just going to work really hard and they want to work 60 hours a week and they're not going to complain if I call them on a Saturday. And I think that there's room for all of us in the market. I think it's a matter of how are we communicating about that. And I've seen some folks that are really good about it. I was reading something that was the leader was saying, like, hey, if you come to the interview and you're asking for work-life balance, like, this isn't the place for you. We are in a place where we are in growth mode and we're working hard. And so I think as long as there's that candidness about it, my concern is really when, we pretend, or we're, oh, we got this fabulous, or maybe it's not even pretending. It's a lack of self-awareness where we're like, we've got this great culture, and it's like, do you? And again, what does great culture mean? What great culture is to me may be very different to the other 5 people I'm standing around. And so how do I know that what I'm looking for and calling great is the same thing that you think is great? And so how does the organization ask those questions? How does the organization be intentional about deciding those things? Who are we? What are we going to offer to our employees? Who do we want to be? Who do we want to? And I think that has been happening for a really long time. And I think the organizations that have really been good at that are very successful, and employees who want that kind of environment seek them out. They're not just looking for a job. They're not just looking for a paycheck. They're looking for a culture that aligns with their values. They're looking for something to be a part of, and they exist. You have to you have to look for it. I would say, that is the kind of organization that we like to work with the most, because they care about the employees and they're trying to do a good job for them. They're fun. They're fun to work for. They care. They're interested. They want to be better leaders.
I'm sure you find this frustrating too. It is that, are you messing with me kind of thing? Like, everybody wants that culture, whatever that culture is. And yet it would be so much more honest. And you get the right people, the hustlers for the ones that want very little, or you can call it work-life balance or integration, right, but probably work 80, life 20. Or, we do love people to go home and have families and and like, to me, it is what you just said around either they're knowingly lying about their culture,
or they just don't know.
You and I have gone into clients and we've had this where you're just like, are you serious? Because like what we, and then you, like, to your point, we have people that have no clue, right? Innocently, honestly, are running their naively running their workers ragged, and perhaps don't even know. I did a lot of work recently around resiliency, and I would love to get your take on that, Karin, around just again, I think about our time going back to teaming, right? And thinking about the kumbaya-ness of teaming, when you go, no, teaming is actually one of the hardest and highest forms of working. And same with resilience and renewal, right? It's kind of the resident leadership, if you've ever read that book. And it's this idea that we all need to renew and we need to reduce. And that's actually really hard. And it actually, if you do that, then you're actually a better worker. And are you seeing any of that in the market? Again, I try and stay away from the motivational speaker, the kumbaya stuff, and really say, like, good, resilient working people are hard at that. They're hard at going home and being rejuvenated and going for walks and working out or journaling or whatever. And they're also really good at working. Are you seeing any of that in the marketplace?
Gosh, that's a loaded question. I'm seeing a lot of all of it. I think, again, what is resilience? How do people define resilience? How do the organization define resilience? I see organizations that expect similar, old, outdated modes of like, just keep going, work until you drop kind of thing. I see tension in the workplace where you have perhaps folks who grew up with a different model of just like, we run hard, we run all the time. And then you have, I don't want to call them bad hires, but mishires, if you will, where you bring people in who don't have that same appetite for pace and, frequency, whatever amount of work. And it can be very frustrating on both ends. And so I think, there is definitely, there's definitely an appetite for, folks to still come and work really hard and also take care of themselves. I think there's a higher level awareness that, it's just not good for us to work that hard and burn out, that's just not good for us for any reason. But again, I think it's a really complicated work market, and you've got a mix of all of it. I think, again, where I'm trying to push is around self-awareness for leaders, self-awareness for organizations, self-awareness for employees and applicants. Like, what matters to you? Yeah, I get it. You need to know, you need the technical skills, and here's what the actual job requires. But then like, what are your other expectations? What's your expectation around the ecosystem in terms of, when you're going to take breaks, and what do you need to do if you have an appointment and you want to run out for a little while? What's the rest of the team doing? And I don't even think that has to all match when somebody's hired into the organization. I just think there needs to be intentional conversation and discussion around it, and an openness to, not be all about what I need, right? Be a little bit more flexible as individuals as we work together as a team. Again, right back to teaming where we were. How do we get it done? How do we get together? And again, I think if you can be in an organization that has that, then there's the likelihood of compromise and success. I think the challenge is that we still have leaders, and I find them at the higher levels of the organization, maybe a little disconnected from the frontline workers who have these needs, who sort of are like, oh, well, too bad, just get it done. And I really feel like that puts a lot of pressure on the middle layers of the organization to translate sort of a apathy towards the human condition, if you will. And, the supervisors who recognize that they have to somehow motivate, support, be flexible, drive results, and get everything out of it. So that's sort of my focus area, is like that middle area. That's really kind of a pinch point.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So we're gonna do a speed round now. A couple questions. All right. We want natural reaction. First and foremost, direct application moment. Okay, it's Monday. People have just listened to this awesome audio or visual interview we just did.
Was awesome.
What are 2 or 3 things that they can implement on Monday or that week, this next week, that would empower their people, that would turn their company on a little bit more?
Yeah, I'm a big advocate, and any folks who participate in any of my leadership sessions will hear listening. It sounds so simple, but it's not. And I think, there's science out there. Our brains process information at a higher rate than we speak. And so when I'm listening to you, my brain is like, that's great, but I'm bored. Let's do something else. And so it's hard for us to sort of train ourselves to actually stay in the moment, to listen, to pay attention, take notes, whatever that is, be responsive and not immediately shift to reacting. And so I honestly, my favorite leaders are the ones who say like, okay, I'm just going to focus on listening for a little while. I think that makes such a big difference. Listen, you hear so much more. You hear the underlying, we're all running really hard to get to the next thing. But if you can actually pay attention and listen, you're showing up. It in itself builds trust.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So that's one thing people can take away on Monday. Just provide more time. Think about space. Be mindful throughout your day, throughout your week around listening. Okay. So the next one, the switch is what we call this. Okay. This is a leadership idea that you once believed as a young Karin and now no longer believe. What's the switch?
I was really embarrassed when I made mistakes. I was mortified. I wanted to do everything right, 100% right. And I think that you got to be willing to make mistakes. And I think there's catastrophic mistakes, and then there's the mistakes that we learn from. And of course, nobody wants to make catastrophic mistakes. But at the same time, that's us trying to do things that maybe we're not as good at. That's us stretching and learning and building new habits and new skills. So gotta be in an environment that's supportive so that you can make mistakes, but then how do you branch out so that you can learn?
Okay. Next one is a leadership anchor. So when it gets tough, when it gets hard, when it gets loud, when there's too much noise for you, Karin, what's your anchor? What's your leadership anchor? What's your life anchor? What do you go back to that kind of roots you?
Yeah, and it's something I'm still working on every day, but I have to focus on the relationships. I think that I've always focused on like, no, I'm right. You just need to hear what I'm saying kind of thing. But no, I think the shift as I've gone through my career is really that it doesn't matter how right I am. If I burn down everything around me, that's not going to be helpful. So focus on the relationships. Take it back a notch. If it's loud, if there's a lot of energy in it, try and calm it down and get back to that place of common ground and figure out how you can compromise and be open to moving forward together. That's my anchor.
That's a good one. I remember coming back from a health issue recovery. It took me 6 weeks, and I remember how important and kind of aha moment there was around relationships. And I was like, going to be so committed to doing it. And like you said, you keep going around that tree every now and then, and the universe kind of whacks and says, "Remember, the relationships are the important ones." Finally, this is one of my favorite ones. So this will wrap us up for the interview. Read, listen, eat. What are you reading right now? And that can be anything from books or Audible, and listening to, so podcast, playlist, a good workout mix, and then finally eat. As a foodie and as an amateur chef, what is either something you have eaten recently that is just phenomenal, or perhaps something you've cooked that you're like, that's spot on. So again, read, listen, eat.
Okay. Reading, I have just picked back up Barbara Kingsolver's Prodigal Summer. That is one of my favorite summer books. I love the character development and the strong women in the book that are grappling with all sorts of issues and resiliency. I love that. So that's my book. Listening to, I just started Green Lights with Matthew McConaughey narrating, and he's just fun to listen to. So I'm not far into it, but
all right.
It's just enjoyable. So I'm going to enjoy that 6 hours.
Good.
And then eating. Yeah. I mean, I've got a huge sweet tooth. And so, my treat at the end of a hard day is something sweet. And I just had this amazing lemon cream cake out at a restaurant recently that was just very memorable. So
you're going to have to go back to that restaurant. When they offer you dessert and no one ever accepts the dessert that they offer, right? They're always like, no, we're good. You're saying start with the dessert.
So much so that I'll go for takeout and just get that dessert so I have a little treat at home. So yeah, absolutely.
Sounds good, Karin. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this episode, and can't wait to connect with you again. Appreciate it so much.
My pleasure. Thanks again, Matt.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to the last episode of Direct Application and for the interview. Thank you for sticking with us a little bit longer. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, share, like, heart. These episodes are available on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, and more. For more information about the show or any of the thoughts shared, please visit www.harringtonbrands.com. And as always, take what you've heard, make it your own, and apply it directly.